Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Autopsy with Maddee P. I'm your host, Maddee P. Girl. What is cracking, queen? I missed you, and you know why I missed you? Because I'm now doing episodes every other week for the time being. Because I feel like it's going to help with the staleness, and the last few episodes were good, and I kind of want to keep that ball rolling. Yeah, I am out of my burnt out phase. Finally, can I get a round of applause, actually, for that? And I'm doing much better, as I say every few weeks. So yeah, we're going to change the schedule up, and when I'm feeling it, I'll go back to every week. But quality over quantity, I think, which, you know, I was giving quantity over quality for a little bit there. So, and I'm in a new location at my boyfriend's house. So Miss Ellie, if you follow my TikTok, Miss Ellie has cancer. The big C. She did have cancer. Past tense. We got it removed. So she is, luckily they got it all out. Thank you for all of your thoughts. And she's laying on the floor, and I didn't want to leave her today. So here we are. And I'm sitting on the floor, clearly. And I just thought it would be a little more intimate of an experience, and I could stop being so robotic and scared that I wasn't entertaining, because I'm not, and I don't care. And I'm here to chat about important things and maybe help somebody. And that's what I'm here for. We do have a fun week planned, but I do want to start with some warm-ups because Lord knows I need them. That I wrote down a guy climbing Tampei. That man in Singapore climbed the top. I thought he was going to fall the whole time. But honestly, that was the gutsiest shit I've ever seen in my life. And it was kind of really inspiring. And immediately I was like, who's climbed the tallest what? I got into a rabbit hole. And I was like watching this little film, and I'm like, you know what? Thank God I never have to do that. But yeah, if you missed it, you should go check that man out, because what the fuck? Good news is you never have to do that if you don't want to. No one will ever do that. But apparently there's like and this is from my boyfriend was talking about this, so I don't actually know the facts. But there's a center in your brain that some people don't have, I guess, that's like kind of broken, where they don't sense fear the same. And I'm wondering if I had that, or if like cocaine provides that for you, or if tequila provides that for you. I don't know. I have it now. I'm scared. I'm just scared in general. So it really explained that. But if I had that actually in my life, like I was blocked of fear, I would be doing some crazy shit. Because like money. And like you could be in every single category of Guinness Book of World Records. Pretty much. Like a bunch of them. I would use that shit to my advantage. You would see me on Red Bull. That's for sure. So this is so stupid, but did you guys know that in some countries they don't differentiate the color blue and the color green? It's the same color. Just a fun fact, because I heard that and I was like, then how do they describe shit? That doesn't separate the horizon then. You're just like, that's blue. The whole thing is blue. What about to colorblind people? Like, I don't understand that. And I can get where they mix together. But isn't that just so interesting? And that brings me to my next point, that every 2 weeks a language disappears. 2 weeks. Do you know how much we're losing? Somebody in like the comments about it, I watched something about it, per usual, was like, imagine the amount of shit we've lost. That's an entire perspective on life, like art, all types of shit that's just wiped off the earth every 2 weeks. What if we all end up down to one language? Because, you know, languages were started, I believe, don't quote me, during like times of war and like with enemy shit, so that the enemy could not understand what you're saying. So would that equal world peace? Don't know. Don't care. Moving on. The stuff I write down for warm-ups. I learned that I am fearful avoidant, which means that I am both deeply loving and both deeply afraid of love. Clearly I have a boyfriend now, so this is something that I have worked on. But I read that and was like, do I really think I'm going to get left like that in my bones? Like, I think I do to some degree. Used to. Past tense. I don't know. I don't really ever get into my types or things like that, because I'm like, how true is it? But that made a whole lot of sense. And I am an Aquarius. And it is my birthday next week. Thank you. Thank you. I will be 26 years old, which kind of matches up with the whole midlife crisis that I was having, mid-20 crisis that I was having. Which honestly, just to recap, because I'm so done fucking talking about it. We talked about it for like 2 months and I was crashing out and everybody around me knows about it. But what I did was immediately move forward, and I feel like that was really helpful for me. So if you're somebody that's stuck in the same job or maybe doesn't have a college degree like me, can't find your passion in life, don't know what you want to do, I immediately got on ChatGPT and like researched as many fucking jobs as I could. And I think I found something that's going to suit me, but I moved forward immediately with it. I didn't rest on it and wait a week, wait 2 weeks. I went ahead and moved forward, girl. And we're working on the resume today, and I got an interview this afternoon. Not for the job, but something close enough to it. And baby steps forward and realizing that my life can't just simply change, that in order to find where I'm meant to be, it's going to take a lot of work. Just like it took a lot of work for me to get sober and for me to start a podcast, it took a lot of work to do a lot in my life. And it's that time again, and I can't just get what I want. And for some reason, that category of life, I want it, and I want it immediately, and like I can't be patient about it. And I think that's because I'm already burnt out of somewhat of a current job, and that has to do with me changing my perspective, you know? And so that's like a hard piece to go through. So I just wanted to rehash that and let you guys know what I did and what I think will be beneficial to you, and that is just moving forward. Okay, this week, girl. I guess we have a quote. We have not had any quotes recently. The quote: maybe I'm not exhausted from doing too much, but feeling so much. The quotes are cheesy, but like, shut up. I don't care. I'm a poet. I'm a girl. Every girl is a poet. And I stand by that. Now, this week, girl, have you guys ever seen my foot before? I'm so sorry about that. I'm going to put those piggies in the market. Put those down. This week, we are talking about always being tired and how to get out of the funk somewhat of always being tired. And I am talking not burnout, not what I was facing. I am talking sheer exhaustion of life. And every single day you were just constantly fucking tired. This period of life can be really scary because when you feel exhaustion like that, sometimes it can last for more than just a season. Like it's a really elongated period of time. And you start to lose yourself and be like, where the fuck am I in all of this? I do like my outlook on this, of my mix of reality and the fact that I do to some degree get to control my own fate. And I think that's important to remember. I think it's important to see where you lie on fate. Is that crazy to say? Like for me, I do think that there is a lot of control involved, and I think people get lost and they want things to just happen to them, and that is just not the reality of life, no matter what you believe or what you have going on behind the scenes. And you know, there is a piece of us that when we get old and we see a lot, I'm 26, thanks, that, you know, life bogs you down and your bones themselves are just tired. And I think that it kind of brings us to, is this exhaustion something that I can change in my life or something that I can accept? And we know here those two questions of can I change, can I accept, are really two important things as we move forward from something. Because we can end up, if we choose that it's the change when really it's accept, then we end up hard as fuck on ourselves for no reason. And I do that still to this day a lot, where I'm like, this is something I can change because I'm convinced I can change it. But it's, again, a law of life, like we talk about. It's a law of nature and the way things are, and it's not. And so you end up bogged down and stressed out. And now, on the other hand, if we choose to accept something that we can change, then we're stagnant and we're stuck where we are for the rest of our lives or for the rest of that period of time. And I think this one is tricky because it is something that we can change, and we'll get into it. But at the same time, we have to accept that life on life's terms and that this shit is just fucking exhausting. And that is something that I can be realistic about and still love my life. I look around, as I do. Y'all know I'm big on observation, and I see old people in life that have lost their smile. Maybe not old, older. People in life who have just lost their smile. They've lost their joy. And it makes me scared. It was a big motivating factor in general of me getting sober, which is kind of strange, but that I wanted all of my life to be beautiful, and that it wasn't this like burnout, crash out phase that when my life is done and I'm turning around, I'm grasping at the little bit of time I have left. Like I'm just hoping somebody brings a grandkid by because I'm fucked and I ain't taking shit with me. And that has always kind of been a fear of mine. But anyways, watching people being taken over by this like adult gray cloud. And I have discussed before, I had an issue with losing my innocence. And it felt like colors were fading and like I couldn't fit in my church dresses anymore. And it had nothing to do with my actions or the fact that I, did bad shit earlier in my life. It was the fact that I wasn't a kid anymore deep down. And that like my mom couldn't hold me in her arms. And it was an inability to move forward, which is strange that I equate that to now. But I still am very firm in the fact that my innocence is mine because I took that back. When I had an inability to go into adulthood and I drank about it, that's a control that I have that I get to keep. I get to be as young as I want for forever. And I don't know, I found that coming back up. At the same time, though, I do want the same responsibilities that people who look really tired have. I want kids. I want a career. I want a beautiful family in my life. And that comes with stress. And the more that you have, the more stress is going to happen. And the more exhaustion that comes into play. So it's not like I'm going to eliminate the factors that cause this to happen. But again, this is something just like the stress episode we had recently and some other episodes that I want to get ahead of this shit. Really important things like stress and exhaustion and fatigue and these things I see people suffer with. Repetition. I'm sorry I'm repeating myself. But I always urge you that when you look around and you see shit on people's faces or even in your direct life, people near you, and you know that they are struggling with it and it's something like neurological that takes years to come out of, maybe, that we have the opportunity with the elasticity in our brain to work on that type of shit now. Like we have the elasticity that we can figure out our stress and we can figure out our exhaustion. We don't have to live like that. But if we wait till then, our brains have been in that game for so long and living in that heightened awareness, or like not even, whatever you want to call that, for so long. Like you can't teach an old dog new tricks, because I always say this. I don't know if I'd be willing. Same as I got lucky that I got sober when I did. I don't know if I'd be willing to do that shit when I'm 40, 50, when I've been in the bottle for so long. And that's something I commit to. Basically, how am I going to trick myself into believing life is always invigorating to some degree? And there are going to be hard times in my life, but as a general, my day-to-day, how is that going to stay invigorating? And that is something I might have to trick myself into. Because that pale blue and that pale gray really takes over when you are partaking in the responsibilities of the rat race and of basic life that I do personally want. And that might not be everybody's wants. And in a way that my achievements don't become so dull. And I've done a season of trying to assess what real success looks like to me and what true happiness looks like to me. Because it was painted so different even 6 months ago. And success does mean a lot of what it used to me, but it does also mean things like becoming a good parent. And I don't care if that's chuggy or cheesy or me fitting into the side of society that people don't believe women should fit into anymore. I don't know how to word that. Don't come for me. Sorry. It's important to me. And there is not a lot of successful parents. You know, I got lucky, I got blessed in my life, but that doesn't happen everywhere. And to me, success now and accomplishments have to include that. As much as they will include, hopefully, success in my career and moving forward with my life and those personal achievements, achievement is broadened to the fact that, like, I will get to share a home with the person I love, and I will get to have children with the person I love, and do so healthily and happily in a life of wonder. That's fucking accomplishment. And when those are dulled too, like, I want to keep that alight, because that's more of a day-to-day concept of achievement. And if we can view it that way, my exhaustion and my fatigue, you know, isn't so present, because I'm not diluting what I have accomplished. I think that's what I'm trying to say. That is an accomplishment, you know, and I don't want that to be diluted in my life, because I do need those things to drive forward now. My responsibilities in life have not been larger. I will say that clearly I think I've seen a lot for my age, and that's not in a tooting my own horn way. I do not play trauma Olympics or that type of shit. I don't talk about what I've been through a lot because I also don't want to deter people from speaking on what they've been through. Because trauma, okay, I'm not getting into it, but trauma in the brain represents similarly no matter the experience you've been through. And so anyways, I have not been bogged by the responsibilities of life. And I want that to be a preface as we move forward. And I am fully aware of that. But I have been through seasons where I was just fucking exhausted. And I just kind of got out of one. And still, even yesterday, I felt like I was just tired, you know? And we can tell the difference in our bones of what exhaustion looks like and a constant state of that versus just like we've had a lot going on and we're tired. And it's sad, I think, to some degree, and a blessing that we live in a society that people that are 26 and younger, I remember experiencing that like early in my 20s. I felt that way and the world was gray. And I think it's this push-pull of us giving into the robot side and understanding that our life maybe is calculated and does look similar to other people. And that is an issue that I have with my own pride personally, that I am vulnerable enough to come share. But it's defeat to give in to the robot side. What is exhaustion? I don't think it's the right word for us to use, because most of the time our body and our mind is fueled. I want you to think about how little you truly need to survive and for it to be happy. Some of my happiest moments, I probably had no nutrition in me and 4 hours of sleep. And that's both sober life and drinking life. It's our mind that's bogged down. So it's like, I don't know another word to use, but is exhaustion even the right term? When I chose to sit back and recognize this recently in my life and kind of divulge it, I recognized that it wasn't exhaustion. It was a disdain for my life. It was a disdain for life in general. And we get too busy to even be able to label it as sadness, honestly, as depression, because we're too busy to stop and look it in the face for what it is. And even too proud to label it as overwhelmed too. I don't hear a lot of people use that word. And when I use the word overwhelmed, I am overwhelmed. It's kind of an extreme, like there should be like an explanation point around me. Like if I say I'm overwhelmed, I'm fucked. And I don't think people utilize that word because I do think across society and especially in close relationships, when you use that word overwhelmed, somebody like views you as your circuit blowing. At least that's how I feel when other people say that to me. And I'm like, oh shit, they're really not doing good. It wasn't so much about what was happening to me and what was on my plate. It was more about the box that I had created on my insides that I fit myself into. And just like we touched on this in the stress episode, but just like that, my perspective was on this pile that kept getting higher and higher when there's like a window to my side that I can see out of. And that pile will continue to get bigger for the rest of our lives. If that's where our perspective is, that doesn't stop. The bills don't start coming. Shit doesn't stop happening to people or to yourself. It continues, and it will continue to continue, bitch. And when analyzing too, I realized like in my most depressed states, I just wanted to sleep. And there is like this correlation there. And I think that in some trippy way, it is also proof of the human condition being that deep. And it's like, that's the manifestation of the human condition being depressing. But the general public doesn't also deal with depression, you know? And I'm not trying to label everybody as depressed here. I'm just connecting dots. And that is because I'm weird about the human condition, and I like talking about it because as a society, we label these very deep feelings and we are too busy to stop, and we label it as something else when we innately do feel these deep feelings. And I think, you know, it's not maybe enough to kill people all the time, but it is something that we can fix and something that can add extreme value to our quality of life. Was that the weirdest thing I've ever said, or did that make any sense to any of you? And I do think this is a little bit different than some things we discuss, because exhaustion, and it can linger, like I said earlier, more than just a season of life. This can go on for months and years of time, which makes, I think, repair time a little bit more difficult. And I think it's important to wake up, and this is also strange, like most things I fucking say, to wake up and realize that there might not be something physically wrong with you. When I would go through this, I would think that maybe it is, especially as women, because we know secretly, tell me I'm wrong, secretly in our gut, we know that like there could be so many things wrong with us, and there are so many things that can be wrong with our uterus, hormones, etc. And the threat of that is very real to us. And it does like sit in the back of our brain because so many women are affected by it. And the way a lot of that manifests is through exhaustion, is through fatigue, is through mood swings and stuff like that. And I think it's important to remember sometimes that might not be the case. And that might not be what's going on with you. And it's another way of writing something off. And so I would sit there and think like, okay, has to be an underlying condition, and I'm just going to keep pushing off the doctor. And, if you do think there's something wrong with you, then go to the fucking doctor. But I'm just saying, we think because we asked for our plate to be full, and we asked for this type of stress, that we aren't allowed to admit that it's tiring or admit that it's hard sometimes. And again, it's that pride that we feel like maybe we're not thankful enough for what we have. And that's not the case, because you can always ask for help. And, I did mention this again in the stress episode, and I feel like these are somewhat synonymous because fatigue has a lot to do with stress being so overwhelming. But it is an honor to be busy. Like I said in the episode, you're blessed to be stressed is something that I heard from somebody that stuck with me. And, that's more of the side of, and I don't always talk about mental health stuff in this light because I don't want to sound like I'm coming off as harsh, because I am also somebody who's experienced the depths of this. So this isn't me trying to say, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and keep going though, because that isn't always the case, and it's not always that easy. But I do think introducing that mentality into your life, because I have experienced seasons that I have not been well while sober and while healing in a much healthier state. And I introduced these pulling myself up by the bootstraps, very basic quotes and ideals in my life that did really propel me forward. And yes, I was stranded, free floating to some degree in how the fuck do I get up, which is the main issue with all of that. But there was like a little support on my back until I found the right spot to be. And I think to some degree too, that is patience and viewing things as periods of time, which I always tell you guys to do, because that changed my life. Just being able to view that at some point I stand back up. And it is a fact. I've proven it to myself over and over again that at some point I do stand back up. That was kind of a little tangent I got on. Now, on to the part where there are things that we can literally do. That was kind of my viewpoint on the whole situation. And now we're moving into what can we actually do in states like this, especially in states where we can't hear ourselves. And the main thing that I learned during these time periods was that I am spiritually fucked. And that my mind and my body are not cohesive in one line. And as simple as that is, when I understood that, and that my exhaustion is actually me not being alive on the inside and being spiritually non-existent within myself, it made a lot more sense. And it made a path to moving forward, which I think is important when we're bogged down. Is just seeing a simple path, just a little bit of light goes such a long way when we're in positions like that. I think in moments when we're spiritually dead, we become bits and pieces of ourselves. And we're like these feverish moments of stress. I can't even see that in the overall picture I am one. Therefore, in my brain, I am not viewing myself as somebody who's strong enough. I'm viewing myself in those pieces, not the power and the unit of being a whole body and a whole mind and spirit put together. And we just stop hearing ourselves altogether when we're spiritually bankrupt like that. And there are pieces of us that are screaming, but we have doled them out so bad that that's when shit starts to get numb. And I do equate that exhaustion to a numbness, because I do think that they're pretty synonymous. And that's when we start being a product of society, of the shit we've been through. Maybe that's partly because we aren't one cohesive rational thought. So our body doesn't even have a leader to kind of go off of, versus when we're strong like that, even if we're confused, we're not feeling well, there's a leader that exists on the inside, because we can hear ourselves and we have this guide propelling us forward. And that can be, you can take that as spiritually as you want. I'm meaning this on a base level of your own brain. and just being able to hear yourself. But if that involves something else for you and inviting higher power or whatever into that, that is when I think we start to enter a serious flight or fight mode. And I think we do that for years. Like, people do that for years, and it's so impossible to get out of the flight or flight. And that was something I really experienced in my anxiety, and in past traumas in my life, where I was stuck in this mode and it was impossible to move forward. There was no leader. It was only fear. We are broken down to this innate animalistic state. Here we are with the fucking animalistic shit again. Because animals don't need to be positive. Animals need to survive. But it's not as simple as animals are, where for them it's food, water, shelter, XYZ. For us, our innateness comes with these things like jealousy and judgment and self-protection. And self-protection looks so much uglier, I feel like, because it's more manipulative as a human, because we're more complex than for an animal, where self-protection is an outburst and it's very straightforward and to the point. And that bogs us down, let alone what we present ourselves as a product to society, which, if you're sitting here, I hope that you recognize that maybe you want to be more than that in your community and in your life, but also to ourselves, because when our life looks like that, that's who we are on the inside. And that will only make things worse. And then after that, slowly in these states, it's no longer about the moment, obviously. But then it gets worse, because it's not about the moment. And then it's not about the week. And then it's not about the month. And then it's not even about the year. And it's like, what the fuck, am I stuck in this for the rest of my life? And I feel like that cycle, like stopping it and getting as close to the moment as we can, is important. Because like, I catch myself and I'll be a couple days and I'm like in this busy mode doing shit, and then okay, now I'm thinking a week ahead constantly, and I have to reel it back in. And luckily for me, usually I'm just getting to the week, and I do view things in a bigger picture, but not in terms of feverishly what is to be done next. And that can be also for a type A person that suffers from that type of exhaustion, because it's trying to get everything done. It's focusing on that pile that doesn't get done in life, and you're trying to get ahead of all of this and you don't get to. And that's really discouraging, because really, maybe it's not exhaustion. Maybe you don't want to fucking do it. You know, when it comes to kids, when it comes to job and paying bills, that's not something that we just get to stop, even though we don't want to fucking do it. And we're too proud to say that we don't want to fucking do it, because we want to be successful in life. But it does put us in a place that we can either create goals out of the environment that we're in, or out of what we have we don't like. We can create goals, or we can find a peaceful way to live in life, that we are not trying to outrun the clock and or getting lost in the fact that like, I don't want to do this. And by that, I low-key mean all of life. But I can't say it because it's so subconscious in me, and I literally do not have time to think like that. And or I am responsible for other people's lives. I can't think like that. Obviously, as people, we crave stimulation. That is not something that we always get to do, especially now with a lot of people's jobs. We don't get to do that. And I don't necessarily want to sit here and be so unrealistic and say this is how we change that, because I'm very much well aware of what actually happens in life. And that is that we don't always get the opportunity to get exactly what we want, which is innately to be invigorated and stimulated. But I do think that center of us breaks. And that's why I always pay attention to my curiosity radar. That's because I'm someone that's oddly curious. I just get really into things, and I then go in rabbit holes and explore it or think about it. And if that curiosity bubble is popped and I want to numb out, I don't know, it's like kind of like a dangerous place to be, because I know that stimulation center of me is broken. And then that's when we're just on TV when we get home, and we don't understand relaxation again, because our body is broken. Now, again, because I'm a realistic person and I know we don't have time to always go sit in the park and paint and do everything we want, especially if you have a lot of responsibility. But I do think positive rest is really an important thing to introduce into your life. And by that, I mean that you can do what you want to do on the inside, which is sit your ass down on that couch because you're exhausted and you're sad. But the positive relaxation could include reading a book. It could include meditation, even like doing a puzzle, getting really into something. And even if you don't have the strength to constantly introduce that, I think it's a stepping stool to finding hobbies in your life and finding things that invigorate you in that downtime so that you can begin to understand your rest and relaxation in a way that's positive and keeps you from a disdain for life. And this is something that I learned actually kind of recently, and it's that our brain actually ages with repetition. So when our days look the exact same over and over, our brain is getting stuck in that cycle, and that's when we begin to age, which I found so interesting because like we at around my age 26, getting into 30, we're saying that we're old, right? And we say it kind of as a joke, but we mean it. We're like, we're fucking old because we're tired, and we know, we can feel it, in our bodies. We're getting older. And it's like the truth. Our mind is aging because this is when we are introduced to desk jobs, whatever your means of work is, or what the fuck ever, and maybe even having kids or being married, and going to work, dinner, maybe gym, even if you have a healthy lifestyle. And this is a tricky concept for me to talk about because I'm also, as you know, a big fan of routine, especially when we get more on the verbiage track of sobriety and what that looks like. Routine is of utmost importance, and I do stick to an important routine. But since I learned that, there has been a little bit of a switch up, and that was also with, I told you guys, one of my New Year's resolutions was pace, and was going with the flow, and slowing down a lot. And it allowed me that space that, every day doesn't have to look the same. And I began to allow myself to put tasks on tomorrow and wake up and I'm like, okay, I'll just go do that extra task now. This is getting extremely off topic. Now, earlier I touched on the fact that honestly, half the time our bodies are fueled and they are rested. So what I did to really help myself was focus on the fact that I am fueled. And when I started feeling tired, this would happen to me especially during like exercise. Yes, during my day, but the example I can think of right now is during exercise, where I'm like, fuck, I didn't have my energy drink. And then I would think, but I had my 2 dates and my food. I began to make it a point that my food would fuel me around my workouts and around my day, and that I'm eating things at a certain time because I know I have this to do after, or I just got done with something, whatever the case is. And for some reason, just reverting my attention to that. And, in reality, that food, we tried our best, like that food gave me what it could, and I tried my hardest. And then I'm like, and maybe it's placebo, me tricking myself into recognizing that I am fueled. And that is so strange, but focusing, if you're not somebody that fuels yourself properly, that is a really important thing to do in your life. And I know easier said than done. You can go look at my discipline episodes or consistency episodes, stuff like that, if you are trying to get on the right track with eating or maybe even exercise or whatever, because I do know that's not as easy. But if you are somebody that eats decent and eats enough meals throughout your day, you're fueled. And remember that. And I like this thing in my life where it's important for me to live in a way that I am in control of myself. And my life revolves around what I can do and the questions of acceptance or change. And that it's this bubble, though, of these are my responsibilities. And in states like that, I think a good identifier is, or maybe even if you're looking for a root of the cause, is that you are becoming somebody else's emotions. And this can be everybody as a whole. And we are overly paying attention and overly indulging in other people's emotions. And we want to label it as their fault, but we are indulging because we're already heightened in stress. And to some extent, we have abandoned ourselves, whether we want to recognize that or not. And that loops back, when others' emotions are our sole priority, and, miscalculating responsibility and stuff, which again is in other episodes. That is when we start to build that judgment and that resentment. And again, all of those piles, and I do talk about those ideals so deeply because it's something that you can tackle. And it seems like such an odd word and like such a big weird task, and it's like, why the fuck do you even want to do that? But that's the shit that adds up to make exhaustion. That's why that bitch, when she's 40 and she's mean to you in the grocery store, and she's got no smile within miles of the place, that bitch is full of bitterness and judgment and resentment. And that is not a life that we want to live, period. And I do feel like that in a weird way, and I'm on this fucking animal track today, I don't know what's going on, just ignore it. That is like scars of humanity. Where like, yes, we have our physical scars of what has happened to us, but like emotionally, bitterness, judgment, resentment, those type of things are scars in us that life has left. And I think that those scars grow, and they grow over the years. Now, another thing I've recognized, I need to hurry up here, is money. I have the money plague too, girl. I suffered with like financial trauma and stuff. And still to this day, my brain gets sometimes wired around finances. Luckily, and I keep dipping into going on tangents, but if you want to talk finances, or, you know, a bad bitch is financially stable. That's something that I always say. And it was important in the beginning of me and my sobriety to save and to work, for my future self, not just for me, but, you know, maybe for my kids, or when it's time for me to buy a house, or these bigger things in my life. I wanted to be able to relax. And luckily now I don't really have to look at my bank account the same I do. And that same I did. And that's not for me to be boastful or for me to brag, but to show you that I did that on a serving job. You know, it's about hard work and commitment. Huge tangent, but we're not going to go into that side of money today, is basically what I'm saying. This type of exhaustion and disdain with life, I feel like, really comes when our only focus in life is money. And when we choose something that we can never get enough of, that's when we start to disappear. And I know that in a different fundamental way, because I have the disease of too much, because I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict. And so I know when I choose things that I can never get enough of, even if it's not something that like is considered a relapse, or something that like, you know, bad, like a substance or something, I do know it's important that I stray away from that, because I'm a bottomless pit of human, and of this will never be enough though. And, you know, whether that's I need to make more money, or even the side of these bills are piling up, how the fuck am I going to pay for this? And don't get me wrong, trust me, I understand how fucking exhausting that is, and how scary that is too. And so I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy to get rain on that, but it is an important perspective to understand that that's just happening in your life. And we do have the ability to take the importance of that out of our picture. And we're walking around in daily life tainted by it. And that is something that we can change. Even though it's real, even though it's stressful, it doesn't have to follow us everywhere we go. So I do urge you to get, you know, some rein on your financial trauma, or sit down and budget and really look at what that means to you. But your relationship with it is super important, and it gives you wrinkles, whether you have enough, whether you don't. And then of course comes limiting our stress intake, limiting stress in general, because we cannot limit the intake sometimes. But we can limit the way that it affects us. And again, this is not something I'm going to dive too deep into, because we just talked about it. We have to learn to manage our stress, period. It is dangerous, and I will die on that hill. Being that stressed is so fucking dangerous, and I view it as like a circuit. And like, to some degree, it breaks. So it could be the smallest thing that happens to you. You are wound up and you are stressed the fuck out about it. And that's because you never gave yourself space. I want you to have the opportunity to live. And I want you to have the opportunity to not have to fix an overridden circuit. I like to take my focus off of being tired if I am out and about and I have nothing left to give. What I will do, again, this is some hippy dippy Maddee, like fairy creep bullshit, but I will ignite my third eye, and I will sometimes just get quiet and people watch, and it ignites this conversation of curiosity inside of me, and boom, that's like stimulation to some degree. I think I'm no fucking psychologist, but then my topic of conversation inwardly and what's happening inside of me isn't this like, I want to fucking go home and I don't want to be around these people and I would like to go to bed now because I'm tired and I have nothing to give, or B, I can't perform to the level that I'm supposed to around people I love, and I'm supposed to take this memory with me and enjoy my time. And those two being the focus when we're tired is something that we can somewhat control. And I'm not saying to fake it. And I'm not saying that you're going to get an energy boost from this. But it helps. Like, it takes it. It maybe is tricking myself into believing that life is invigorating and placing some type of joy in some way to a place that it wouldn't be before. And during those moments, constantly reminding myself that I'm here for the journey. And this can even be when I'm going through monotonous things. And I did work really hard on finding joy in the mundane again. And we did episodes on that. And it was, a small period of life I went through where I wanted things to be magical. And, at the same time, I accept that life is the way it is and that everything is not going to be beautiful. But at the same time, I do have the control to create a positive environment for myself. And so what I did then, and I think this might even be like a therapist technique, but focusing on sound, smell, and color when I'm out. And I do this weird thing where like I look at my hands and look at my body and I'm like, I'm a human though in flesh. And that's a weird curiosity or like a weird thing I have that invigorates me, where I view being a human as an opportunity. I think it's magical. I think it's strange. I think it's fucked up, and I think it's awesome. And it's this like deep rabbit hole that I go into myself where like my brain is functioning like, what am I, and again, that's Maddie shit, but I think it's cool. You can invite, like just looking at color and seeing how pretty it is, or there's sounds or there's smells around you, and playing, like it's almost like playing games in your mind. And I don't know if this makes any sense, so I'm gonna move on. That doesn't do a ton for you. I mean, it did for me, but at least it's taking the opportunity to stare into the abyss and say, I hate this, away from you, which is something that needs to be taken away from me myself, because I have a tendency to do that. I will stare into the abyss and say, I fucking hate this place. And I can be the weird Maddie that loves smells and all this weird shit, and at the same time be somebody who understands darkness and sadness. Maybe it's reteaching myself that it's okay to be bored. My mom always would tell us when we were little that bored shouldn't be in your vocabulary, and I do think that's maybe I was given the opportunity to have like a creative mind in that way and to make opportunity of things. But I think it's sad in us as adults when things don't invigorate us the same and we feel as though we're a failure, but we have to find those new things. And that's why I'm such a big fan, and it's so cheesy now, of like the adult hobbies. And y'all see me on TikTok with it. Like, mine are swimming and working out and doing word searches and like a bunch of random things, reading in my life. And I think it's just fun reintroducing new hobbies. And this might not be something that brings us joy and brings us peace, but I don't know, there's a sense of guilt that exists there that we can kind of take off the table. It's okay that once something that excited me doesn't excite me anymore. And that's something that I have to learn to be okay with. Is that new color of gray, versus I've seen pink and purple and blue all the time. Where is this gray coming from? And it's just a color that I see. And sometimes that's the way that life looks for me, and that's okay. Again, it's very important, the reality side of life, that, at the same time, for if you need a swift kick in the ass and that's what you came here for, that we did not ask to be rested. We asked to be successful. We didn't ask to not be tired anymore. And I think it's important to go back to that root. What did you ask for? What did you want in the first place? Because your comfort wasn't of utmost importance when you made the decisions, and it can't be of utmost importance now. And I think we cling to this comfort, and maybe it's that adult thing where like, we're sad deeply to some degree, maybe, potentially, if you're facing a tired, exhausting thing like this, but also we're being ripped of, and years ago, being ripped of like this childhood, which is a strange phenomenon that I also don't want to dive into, but we get glued to that comfort. And I think what I mean to interpret that by is that it's deeper than we think. And that, why are you glued to comfort, and what does comfort mean to you in that deep psychological way? Like for me, I just said my reasons for it and why comfort is important, because I get so uncomfortable because I'm not a kid anymore. And that like I grew up in these years that I couldn't see because I was fucked up, and that's my own personal story. And I missed a lot of opportunity, but it doesn't fucking matter. I get to live this beautiful life now. And I lived it then too. I just chose not to take it with me because I was fucked in the head. Practically speaking, I just want to throw this in there. Chill with fucking caffeine. It doesn't even work. Okay. And I'm somebody who loves caffeine. And when people say drink less caffeine, come on. I did always say though, my dad would be like, this coffee doesn't even work. And I'm like, God forbid I make it to that state. I really hope I never make it to that state. So I would drink less coffee because I always need something to work. Something has to stimulate me because I ain't doing it on my own. The sleep is not sleeping right now. And I have never felt more alive than I have a morning cup of coffee or a morning energy drink. I ain't cutting it out. I'm not that type of crazy. Not throughout the day crutching to caffeine, because you're lying to yourself. Your 3 p.m., 4 p.m. pick-me-up does not work. What works is pushing through that day after day and just yawning and living with it. You don't have to perform to this level you think you do. You can be tired and continue to get through your day. So I've had a few days where I'm like, I tell my boyfriend, I'm like, I would like to have a 3 p.m. coffee. And we never do it. And it's a good thing because I end up so much more invigorated. And then, then there goes the whole situation of productive sleep. Just so you know, if you're drinking, smoking, or eating a ton right before bed, your body does not actually go to rest. And I know part of my argument today was the fact that, you are rested sufficiently, but to some degree, maybe you're not. Maybe you're not fueled, maybe you're not rested. And so your body is not actually sleeping for like X amount of time until the high wears off, the drunk wears off, or your body's done digesting. So you are not getting productive sleep like you think you are. And it's better that you lay there and try to go to sleep for an extended amount of time, because you will eventually fall asleep, than forcing this situation of tiredness, whether it's through alcohol or food or whatever. So I do think it's a fake it till you make it situation with caffeine and with going through your day, and just accepting the fact that you're fucking tired. But I talked about being tired in several different senses of the word. So I hope what you came here was maybe fed to some degree through something I fucking said. But also, this is a random point, but I did this, and I don't know if this is a good tip of advice, but like, if I'm going to live in that roboticism and like this tired state, then I'm going to make it count. Then my roboticism is going to include going to the gym, include my fucking green juice and eating good and stretching and drinking water. And it's like, if I'm going to fucking hate this shit anyways, I might as well look snatched. And we're moving away from that. We do it for our health and for our mind and for our future self to be healthy and to take down that medical cost when we get old. So, and then at some point, and I'm not going to sit here and also tell you, the importance of exercise and of eating good, because that does, as much as you don't want to hear it, that invigorates you. That puts life inside of you. That's what stimulates me every day. Did I say that right? Stimulates me every day is getting up and exercising and moving my body and eating accordingly. And, at some point in your roboticism, if you choose health through that, at some point you're going to wake up and be like, oh my God, I feel fucking great. Just saying. If you're going to be a robot, at least wake up one day and be snatched about it and feel really good. And I think people undermine that. And I hate to talk about it because it's such a preachy argument and such a preachy stance. But like, if you want to feel better, there's things that you can do that aren't that difficult. It doesn't take healthy food that long to work. It doesn't take cardio and lifting weights that long to work for your mental health. And that's because I'm a product of that. I am somebody who suffered deeply, and I had a lot of side effects in my life. Even after I got sober and I wasn't suffering at such a deep level, I have never known peace in the way that I have through my health journey. And that's because I'm fueled properly. And life isn't perfect. Life isn't dandy. I don't have the most snatched waist in the world, but I'm working on it. But I'm happy, and that's what matters. So even if we have to search feverishly in life for joy and for something to wake us up, then that's something that we do here. And if you take anything away today, I hope that inspiration stays with you. Maybe some of that made sense, and maybe it didn't. I love you guys, and I hope you have a great week. Bye.